What's going on, guys? I'm Makah P, and we are back with another episode of CHL Mailtime. With me, featured last week on the LGHL PA Town Hall meeting, the Medicine Hat General Manager, Nicky Dubya. Welcome to the show, Nicky.
What's going on, man?
Not too much. Obviously, we're just wrapping up the regular season about 30 minutes ago, so things are really starting to take shape and unfold for everybody. So as we're processing all that, I got a team from the QMJ on standby, ready to do the QMJ playoff preview, followed by tomorrow night, we'll have the WHL playoff preview. And until then, you guys are stuck with me and Nicky here on CHL Mailtime. This is where you guys can call in, tweet at me, all that good stuff. Get your voice out there and be heard on the CHL call-in show. All kinds of questions are welcome. Keep them clean. If you're still looking to call in, the phone number is 774-260-5411, or use the hashtag CHL Mailtime on Twitter, and we will get your stuff read and commented on. I brought Nicky in here because he is one of the more well-spoken, outspoken general managers here in the CHL. And first of all, let me congratulate you on winning your division and making it the number 2 seed in the WHL East.
Thank you, sir.
How was the road to the playoffs thus far?
It was crazy, man. We had all sorts of bumps in the road, but the team stuck together. We had a really good core that just kept their heads in it, and we had a lot of interchangeable parts. Our training camp stayed active and stayed positive, and we managed to keep the train going, I guess.
I mean, yeah. Besides you guys played in the much more competitive conference with teams like Moose Jaw, Swift Current, Red Deer, and Saskatoon, along with yourselves. I mean, it wasn't an easy road for you guys, and with an exception of the Lethbridge Hurricanes, the Oil Kings, and the Kootenay Ice, the division itself was fairly competitive. Not just the conference.
To be fair, Lethbridge was a really solid team at the beginning. They kind of tapered off at the end, but I always considered them a really good team. They had their own internal issues or whatever. I don't really know what happened, but at the time, I always considered them and Red Deer as top competitors. Obviously, at the end of the season, if you look at the stats, it doesn't look that way, but they always played us hard. So,
yeah, I mean, up until these last couple weeks, the only teams in that division that I really overlooked would be Edmonton and Kootenay, but everybody else in my eyes was always a contender. No one was really on the outside looking in, and according to this, until all the stats are final, the Hurricanes still have a shot at that 8th seed over Calgary, so that should be interesting to see how everything pans out once all the stats have been inputted and finalized.
Yeah, I definitely like to give credit to Kootenay for never giving up. I mean, at the beginning of the season, everybody had written them off, and they've been fighting hard all the way to the end. So good for them.
Yeah, I mean, and congratulations to everybody that got into the playoffs, and not just that, but the teams that stuck it out and played all their games up until the end, regardless of their situation heading into the postseason, whether they were eliminated or not. There were teams out there that just folded, walked away, and left their games to be forfeited. However, there were a lot of teams out there that played until the end and gave it their all, and you really can't say enough about them and the credit they're deserved or due, however you want to word that, in a sense of being eliminated and still giving your time and effort into a league like this.
Well, I'd like to hope that everyone does that. I mean, I've played on teams that were, at the absolute bottom of the standings, but you got to play for pride sometimes.
Definitely, definitely. So, without further ado, let's get into our first question, which comes from...
What's up, Powder? It's LZ, Scoop and Chuck, LZ of the Moncton Wildcats. I want to know, what do you think the QMJHL is going to look like after this week? Thank you.
All right, so the question's about the Q. I didn't quite catch the gamer tag, but he is a member of the Moncton Wildcats. So let me just start by saying, if you're paying attention to the forums, you know that all 16 teams are in, and only the Quebec Remparts and the Charlottetown Islanders are eliminated. So based on the Q and what you see coming out of there, what is your take on the playoff outlook of the Q and the way things are shaping up for the postseason?
obviously coming from the W, we don't see too much of the Q. I've been following the standings and reading the chats and whatnot. And I mean, the top 5 seeds are very, very solid. After that, it's really a question mark. And obviously at the bottom, I don't know who decided that 16 of 18 teams should make the playoffs, and I feel bad for 16 and 15 having to face 1 and 2. I expect a bloodbath. I mean, anything can happen, but I mean, those look like 2 pretty easy wins for Titan and Voltigeurs. So yeah, I mean, best of luck to. I always root for the underdog for sure. I mean, but it looks like a pretty rough road for those 2 teams specifically. The rest of them are right in the middle of the pack. You got a lot of around 500 teams, and anything can happen. Some of these teams at the top had to deal with some call-ups that could mess up their chemistry. I know we've had that in the W as well. So, like I said, anything can happen, but it's not looking good for the 15 and 16 seed. That's for sure.
I couldn't agree more. I'm not sure with the tweet. I can't quote it exactly, but somebody had mentioned how the second or third worst team was still in the playoffs mathematically, and and I understand people's issues like, oh, so many teams make the playoffs. Well, I like the fact that everyone's in the playoffs. It keeps it realistic as the fact of that's how it is in the real life, where the QMJ 16 teams make it, 2 are eliminated. But it makes that road to the playoffs that much harder, but the victories that much more special. As far as what's going to happen in the playoffs here, I mean, obviously the Titan and the Voltigeurs are the heavy favorites, but teams like the Fours, the Mooseheads, even the 7-seed Saguenines, are all teams that I could see in the QMJ final and possibly even upsetting a powerhouse team like the Titan or the Voltigeurs. So, as far as the teams that are eliminated, the Remparts and Islanders, sorry to see you guys go so early, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Moncton Wildcats and the Cataractes are joining you guys shortly thereafter. So thank you for the question. We do appreciate it. And we will move on. Our next one comes from Twitter. It's actually from Rush Puck, the Swift Current Broncos general manager. This isn't necessarily related to the season itself, but the league as a whole. And he wants to know is, what do we think the switch to next-generation consoles, if it will hurt LG membership for the next season? I think he's obviously assuming that it's going to hurt. We can't say that for sure, but let me hear your take, Nicky, on what you think the next gen will bring for League Gaming.
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be a superior game. I know a lot of us are looking forward to that. New announcers right there. It's worth the $60. As far as the league itself goes, I don't see any change. I mean, yeah, it might start slow the first season under the Xbox One. I know there's some people that were very vocal, but usually the people who are the most vocal tend to be in the minority, the loudest ones. I plan on playing on the One. Do you plan on playing on the One?
I definitely do. I mean, obviously, I still got to purchase my One. I've been slacking when it comes to that. But that's just because I still got NHL 14 on the 360, and I love the game itself. But as far as a league standpoint, I mean, numbers are going to fluctuate league to league, season to season, based on the timing of it, the system we use, things like that. For a lot of people are talking how, the PlayStation 4, people might be switching to that, and they may not be back here at LG. Well, there's also probably a handful of guys that don't even have a 360 anymore that will be rejoining the league. So I think you're going to have a drop-off on some of the current members, but you're also going to have a group of newer guys coming in or returning members that jump to the Xbox One earlier on in its shelf life.
No, I can agree with that. And also, again, I mean, look at all those kids on the training camp. They'd love those spots. So, I mean, if you're one of those holdouts that, don't want to play for principal or whatever, you're just anti-Microsoft right now because of the way the One kind of bombed their release, you're going to lose your spot. There are kids ready to take it.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I was one of those guys that was borderline, I think I'm going to go PlayStation 4. I think I'm going to, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But in the end, everybody I play video games with on the Xbox 360, maybe 4 or 5 out of the 100 people on my friends list got rid of their Xbox altogether and went with PlayStation. And I good for them. That was their choice. But me, I'm going to stay with the majority of that, and I love League Gaming, and I'm not just a homer here trying to say the league's the best, but it is the superior place to play Internet Sixes, and without a doubt, that I don't see myself playing in one of these other leagues, and I haven't heard much of the other PlayStation leagues, so for me it makes no sense to switch, and hopefully everybody else will be able to make their own sound decision, and we'll see them back for Season 5 of the CHL and Season 19 for the AHL and NHL. So, moving on to our next question, and it comes from a private message from White Silence 14. He is from the QMJHL, and he wants to know excuse me, let me just get my story straight here. This is to Nicky Dubya, directed right at you. What team would you want to play in the playoffs, and who on your team, the Medicine Hat Tigers, do you expect to lead by example for your team during the playoffs?
I'll take the second part first because it's easier. We don't necessarily have captains or leaders. Everybody just kind of plays as a unit. We need the second line to step up, though, if we're going to make some noise in the playoffs. They've been pretty good all year, but we need them to be as good as they possibly can be. Third line's kind of shaky. We've had a lot of moving pieces. They haven't really had a lot of time to gel. Our first line has just been murderous. I mean, you've seen their numbers. They're very, very good. But they're not going to be able to play all 7 games. So it's really we're gonna lean on the second line and hope that they can come through for us. As for the first part of the question, I think everyone knows the answer to this. We want Kamloops. It's just that simple. They're the best team in the league by far. And if you want to consider yourself the best, you got to beat the best team. As a Bruins fan, I always want to play Montreal in the playoffs because you have that old school bitterness. And I think if anyone's read the forums or seen the Twitter wars we've had, Kamloops and Medicine Hat are not big fans of each other. We keep it civil, but hey, we would love to see them on the ice. They've gone the best of us in the regular season a couple times, but the playoffs are a different animal. So we're all about playing Kamloops. I hope we get there.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. Personally, if any sport across the board, when my team that I'm rooting for, which is usually a hometown team, Bruins, Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics. And I'm not bringing Nicky on just because he's a hometown guy. I'm bringing Nicky on because he's a good guy. But basically, when my team gets knocked out of a postseason, I always root for the team that beat us in a subliminal sense, so I can say at least we were beat by the best.
Unless it's the Yankees.
Even then, though, if I have to root, I'm not one of those jerk fans that says, "Hey, I gotta hate the Yankees just because they're from New York." I respect the hell out of the Yankees. And I know that they have that talent and the management and the ownership and all that front office good stuff that makes them who they are, in folklore of baseball legends.
All right, so hold on. Just decide this. Are you telling me that you rooted openly for Montreal to win the Stanley Cup?
Well, that's actually another personal issue. My grandfather's from Montreal. My dad grew up a Montreal fan. My dad, to this day, is still a Montreal fan. And we had some heated rivalries in our own living room watching these games, and it was brutal.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when all was said and done, I said, you know what? If we can't beat Montreal, we don't deserve to be the best. And if we're gonna get beat, I hope we get beat by the best. Obviously, that didn't happen, and we got beat by a 3rd/4th place team. Right now, you guys are slated to play the Random Wheat Kings, which, if everything goes correctly, I'm not sure if their final games are posted, but it's either them or the Regina Pats. And I mean, for Medicine Hat, either one is going to be, I won't say a cakewalk, but it shouldn't be too much of a challenge. It's more of a preparation for those later rounds in the playoffs for your lines to understand how each playoff works and the rulings and how these lines work. If you guys didn't catch the post, there is one posted by Crazy Ron about all these playoff rules, which can be confusing coming from a guy that had to deal with it last year. Nicky Dubya's dealing with it this year. But as far as your team as step-ups, I mean, for me, it's always a goaltending issue. You got to have a goaltender that's ready to step up. Obviously, Shadow Kaz is your go-to guy, correct?
No, Shadow Kaz got called up by a losing team, and now we lost him. Yeah, thank you, Toronto Marlies, for calling him up just so you can miss the playoffs. Congratulations.
Wow, that's a tough burn. So who are your 1 and 2 goalies going into the postseason as of right now? Is it
It's
Lazy
kind
Kid?
of a touchy subject. Well, we had a starting goalie. I'm not going to mention his name. He flaked out and decided he didn't want to play for us. I luckily managed to pick up. I actually was randomly assigned another goalie that someone on my team was familiar with. We threw him right into the fire, and he's been excellent for us. So we haven't lost a beat. I actually played goalie for our team this week as the backup goalie because we just didn't have time to replace our disgruntled goalie. I'm not going to blame the league for slacking, but they slacked pretty hard on that one. And we just got that situation worked out. So going into the playoffs, we'll have another backup goalie. But right now, we're relying on George 76. He's been playing out of his mind. He came right in here and started playing hard. And I wish I still had Shadow Kaz. He was a great player, great competitor. I actually just spoke with him before this and said it's too bad that after you guys were eliminated, you couldn't have just come back, or something like that. But that's not how the rules work. So we got to do what we got to do. But I don't think we've lost a step, honestly. I mean, the first week that Shadow Kaz got called up, we went 8-1. That was our best week of the season. So we'll do okay. Like I said, we're a defensive-minded team. We protect our goalies if we can, and even if you're an average at best goalie like me, I ended up putting up a shutout because I only faced 7 shots. That's what we do. We try to prevent shots, and if we let up shots, we want them to be as far away from the goalie as possible. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but yeah, that's our strategy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's always a good one. All right, so our next question, once again, heading back into league issues. We're jumping around a little bit here tonight, but that's all right though because these questions are always good. And this one comes from I'm gonna have to rank some of my my staff members here on the CHL media. And this is my second hardest working guy. Kind of flaked out on me a little bit, but it's Zach here. And let me play his message, then I'll explain why he is such a dedicated member. Let me play that.
Hey, Todd. My name is Zach here. I'm a winger for Prince Albert. I just wanted to ask you what you think about all of this, all these IP, what do you think we could do to implement the IP checks into all these second tag situations? And sorry about quitting color rankings, and you guys can tune into my weekly corner, it's Zach's Corner, every Thursday after, never mind, either whenever I decide to post it. So, yeah, peace out, man.
It's Zach here. A little bit confused on what he's trying to say, but he is promoting his own thing. He flaked out on me a little bit with the power rankings, and it's understandable. This guy has played a total of 6 games total in the CHL this season, but he's still one of the most dedicated members to the league. So you got to give a guy credit that doesn't get much playing time, that still shows up to produce content for you guys. So, props to Zach. It's Zach Corner. Check it out in the forums. It's there. We got 3 of them up so far. I'm sure he's producing more, and he's excited to go for the playoffs. He will be joining me for a show later on down in the postseason, and let's get to his question, IP checks. As far as that, for me, I'm not a technical guru or anything like that. I don't know how all that works. I assume the site administrator, Tristan, and Ozzy handle all that. And as far as second tags, listen, if you're cheating in an online Sixes hockey league, you got some serious problems in your life, and you should probably reevaluate it and get off Sixes hockey. Nicky W, what are your thoughts on second tags, IP checks?
Totally stole my thunder. You said exactly what I was going to say. I mean, first off, I don't know anything about it. I don't have access to that stuff. I don't know how to do IP traces. I mean, I'm aware of it. I understand, how it works, but I don't do that kind of stuff, so I can't really speak on it. I don't know how easy it is. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you can set up a proxy that would block it or whatever. If you were that dedicated to cheating at Sixes hockey, as you stated, if you're at that point in your life where you're dedicating that much time into getting an edge in this game, really, yeah, there's not much that can be said about that. You just might have a little bit of a sociopathic tendency there. Just time to find something else to do with your time. I mean, we all love hockey, but when you take it to that level, it's sad. It's pathetic.
So Dr. Nicky analyzing the cheaters as sociopathic people that need. I put a lot of time into this league. I know you do as a GM. I know a lot of the media team staff does, and I can tell you that if you have time to cheat in this league, please devote some of this time to helping media team, because we could use the help. If
I
you
have,
have
I have an EGM opening if you want it. Jeez, I mean.
I have my friend's gamer tag. I have my friend's gamer tag on my Xbox just because I was helping him level up his card when he first got the game. And that's about the extent of cheating I'll go with, but I would never bring that into league play or things like that. Shout out to Slater's Mullet, who is no longer with LG, but I'm sure he will watch this somewhere down the line. Not a very active member, but he's a good guy on the whole. All right. So IP checks, obviously something needs to be done. We need to get rid of these second tags and eliminate some of these cheaters for sure. We're going to move on to our next question. It comes from a unidentified caller who is great with impersonations. Wouldn't identify himself as the person he does, but we'll let it play anyways.
Yes, hi. This is President former George W. Bush, and I just want to know what you think about the right defenseman from Spokane, named the Makah P. He is, in my opinion, the most undervalued and underappreciated defenseman in the league. So just tell me what you think. All right.
All right. First of all, that was not former President George Bush, in case anybody was confused. Neither H.W. Bush or W. Bush. It was a random member disguising his voice, so I don't want anybody from outside of League Gaming to get confused and think that we had former presidents on our show and think that we are running media content with them. As far as the Makah P goes, I mean, he comes from Spokane, obviously. I was handed his name by a few members from other leagues as a guy that my GMs should look towards picking up, and I can't say that he's been anything less than productive on our team. And it's been good having another defenseman that wants to play defense and not a forward that converted just to make the team's needs. Since coming to Spokane, record's not so great, but he also doesn't play with one of the better lines, but he still shows up every game. On the season, he is 7-7 with, he has 3 points, and 6 of them come from goal. Oh man, these stat lines are all messed up on this page. So Makah P stat page. But yes, we love having him on Spokane. We love having any defenseman. We've gone through so many. We've lost so many to call-ups that any defenseman is appreciated. Nicky, do you have any experience with the Makah P, or are you?
I'm not familiar with him, to be honest. I'm just looking at the stats. Yeah, I mean, he seems like a stay-at-home defenseman. He's not looking to put up too many big numbers. He, plus minus is pretty good, all things considered. Had a couple of bad weeks before he came to you, but you'd know him better than me, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, Makah P, we love having you on the team, obviously, and we look forward to hopefully a long playoff run. As far as the George Bush impersonation, I would say it sounded more like a Bill Clinton mixed with a Quagmire. Not so much of a George Bush, but I do appreciate the call, as we appreciate all calls. These next couple questions are stuff that I devised to keep the show a little bit more interesting, and stuff that I know Nicky here is very passionate about. So let's just start getting into those. And first, I want to know, what is it like being a GM here for you in the CHL? What are your keys to success? What are the good things? What are the bad things? And what are the other things that, maybe not the most glamorous position in the League Gaming community, but definitely one of the most important?
Yeah, man, it's hard to say until you actually get in there and do it. I came in here thinking it would be an easy job. I know I have a couple of former GMs that I had criticized their ability to do the job in some heated moments when we weren't doing so well, and I felt like I had some better ideas, and I figured what better way to prove it than to get in here and try to do it myself. It is not easy. It's a very thankless job. You have a lot of personalities, and you can't keep them all happy. Eventually, you're going to have to make a decision that's going to hurt somebody's feelings. And yeah, I mean, you don't get paid. I mean, that's number one, right? Like, people talk to you like you're getting paid to do this, when in reality you're just dedicating all this extra free time to, for stats and for making lineups and for letting players vent to you about things that bother them, and trying to keep everything balanced. I would say that's the hardest part for sure, is the personality balance. You have 17 guys. They're all different. They all, on my team, it's all about who the best guy is. We have a group of players that have been in heavy competition as to being the #1 player on the team, and it's gotten heated. I would say it was bad for chemistry at some points, until they learned how to be a little bit more tactful about how good they are to the rest of their team. But yeah, like I said, to make a long story short, it's if you can handle the personalities, then you can handle the job. The rest of it is just basic, putting the work in, putting the stats in, making sure your guys are ready to play the games. The hard part is when someone's in a bad mood, or something. We've had real life issues. People's, it will have family member issues, or they'll have pet issues. We've had a lot of weird stuff. We had a guy who had to miss a game because he was building a bird coop, and I had to go back and tell the rest of the team that we were going to be missing a guy because he was building a chicken coop, and I'm sure he's going to be pissed if he hears me talking about this. Yeah, it's all about the personalities, and that makes it fun, but it makes it a challenge as well.
Yeah, a lot of responsibility comes in with being a GM, but literally here in this case, when the bird does fly the coop, it makes things difficult. So, props to all the GMs out there, not just you, but to everybody that does put in the time and can stick it out for the entire season. And even another shout out to those that stepped in for GMs that couldn't hack it and had to deal with a hand that was dealt to them by somebody else and continue on. And even some of them made the playoffs, which is pretty impressive considering. Last year, obviously, Bocasmo had to step in as the GM from the AGM role, and he took it on to the Memorial Cup. I would love to see a team that could make a long playoff run with a replacement GM from earlier on this season. So, moving on. Now, this one I think is probably one of your most passionate topics, especially here in the CHL, especially heading into the playoffs with some of these powerhouse favorites. What is your opinion on players who choose to stay in the CHL as opposed to moving on to the AHL when called upon?
Well, I guess it depends on how you do it. I know there are some rules in place that allow players to stay. That helps management keep at least a core together. In my case, I came in, I didn't really understand that part of the system, nor did I have any familiarity with the roster, so I didn't keep any of the players from last year. And personally, if it were me, I would have refused to stay, because I personally believe that this league is a 3-tier league, and you want to move up. Nothing against the CHL. There's some amazing talent here, but until you're in the NHL and you're playing against the best of the best, and anyone who's done any ECUing this year, you can tell the difference. The NHL is just such a good product, and you want to be there. If you're a competitive person, you should want to get there. And how do you get there? You're not going to get there by staying in the CHL and dominating. Look around. You'll see a lot of familiar names, and they're still here, and it hasn't gotten them very far just by being the best player in the CHL. I think that there are a lot of sketchy things that happened this year. Actually, it's not that I think I know. I know there were a lot of sketchy things that happened this year. A lot of players that either gave us some can I say bullshit excuse? I don't know if we're allowed to say that.
You already said it, so I guess we'll have to go with it. But yes, that is fine as long as it's not
My apologies, but there's no better way to describe it. To avoid being called up. I've talked to GMs in the AHL that have spoken to me about specific players. That I'm not going to blow up, but I think they know who they are, and eventually things started happening. It's strangely, all of a sudden, players started getting called up after the lid got blown off, but it happens everywhere. And from a personal perspective, I've had players that said, hey, I like playing here, and I don't want to play for my AHL team, and I've told them, just, hey, look, give it a shot. Tell them how you feel, but don't refuse it outright. Don't just say I'm not going to play for you. Go up there, give it your best, and if you want to talk to your GM and say, look, you guys are out of the playoffs already. There's really nothing for me to contribute here. Like I said, my problem with my starting goaltender, that's a classic example of a totally useless call-up. I mean, there was just such a small chance of them making the playoffs, and in the process, they took our starting goalie away to do it. So
What team was that?
That would be the Toronto Marlies.
Okay. Yes.
They screwed my team pretty hard, and that's fine. Like I said, that's the system. I get it. If it were me and I had a mathematical chance to make the playoffs, I would look for my best chance too. Shadowcast went 7-1-1 for them down the stretch. That should have been good enough, and it wasn't. So now he'll be sitting on the sidelines when he should be in the playoffs. So I can relate to some of those GMs that have frustration with the system. But at the same time, if you have frustrations with the rules, get the rules changed. I mean, don't just defy them. I mean, now you're cheating. Now you're circumventing the rules. However you want to call it to make it sound less obvious or whatnot. But yeah, there are a lot of people going against the grain and trying to figure out loopholes and ways to avoid it. A lot of guys blatantly refuse call-ups. Oh, I can't play at 10:30 or 10 o'clock or whatever time it is. And then you'll see them online still. Oh, weird. There was a lot of sketchiness going on. I think that the best way to solve, at least for that part of it, is to have all the games start at the same time. That way, there's no excuses. If the games are all 8:30, 9:30, then you can't use that as an excuse. That just gave everybody such a easy free out to avoid the call up. And I feel bad for the AHL teams too, let's be honest. I mean, there's some fringe AHL teams that could have used a couple of players that could have put them from, say, 10th place to 7th place, and now they're on the outside looking in because they had players refuse to join their team. Also, and I don't remember if I posted this on Twitter or not, but if this is new information for you, I had an AHL GM tell me that he specifically acquired players from a team and then refused to call them up because he wanted to show the league how stupid the system was. So instead of trying to change the rules, this AHL GM went out of his way to acquire the rights to players he had no intention of calling up. It hurt his team, obviously, because now he has a training camp filled with players that he doesn't intend to use, just to help his buddy win in the CHL and to prove to the league how bad their system was or whatever. And obviously that is the absolute wrong way to go about it. If you have a problem with the rules, then bring it up with the BOGs or make a post, or I don't know what you gotta do, but to just blatantly defy them, and now he's gone. So I guess it worked itself out.
Yeah, and the system will work itself out with time. Things aren't always going to be handled immediately. As much as we would love instant action, it can't be done that way, especially in an internet hockey league. We don't have a commissioner that can travel from house to house and call everybody up personally and get everybody's take. But the way people speak to others makes a huge difference in the way complaints and things like that are handled. But this goes back to me. If you don't want to play in the NHL, if you have no desire to play at the AHL and NHL times, and you're in the CHL, then why are you wasting your time here? Because all you're doing is prolonging the inevitable that you are not as good as you think you are, and you're just coasting through the CHL, padding your stats, and trying to be a legend here in the CHL. But being a legend in the CHL is like being the skinniest kid at fat camp. You're still at fat camp, and yeah, you're the cool one, you're the skinny one, but guess what? You're still here at fat camp with all of us. So, I mean, no knocks to anybody personally, but being the best kid in the CHL is not necessarily the coolest thing, and you should always strive to be in the best league. If you want to play with your friends, go play club.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, final question before we get out of here. What changes do you think are necessary for the CHL, and what are some of the things that you would like to see personally? So give me some changes that you think are necessary and some of the things that you think would be good to have, in your personal opinion.
Well, number one, I believe we should go back to quote-unquote the other leagues system as far as the time goes. Like I said, that always worked better over there. I don't know, I don't know why this league has staggered starts. I guess maybe to make it easier for ECUs or whatever, but I think that really just gives everyone a huge loophole for those people that want to stay in the CHL. If the time doesn't work for you in one league, then the time just doesn't work for you in LG, in my opinion. Like, if you can't be available for basically all three leagues' times, then you're not really part of the league. I mean, if you were a minor league player in the real AHL. You can't refuse to be called up to the NHL because I don't like planes. Are you like that guy from the Royce White or whatever, the guy with the basketball player that refused to fly? You want to take a bus or whatever. The point of the matter is you don't get to make your own rules. The rules are for everybody. If you can't adhere to them, then you shouldn't be here. So I think that's number one. It takes a massive loophole out of the system. I think there needs to be a little bit more transparency regarding the rules, but not in the way that we do it. I don't know if you've ever seen the list of complaints. There's a list on the website of complaints and responses, and I feel like a lot of that stuff should be kept in private to a point. I feel like the rulings should be made public, and I believe the evidence should be made public, and I believe that. But I don't believe that those initial statements should be out there because it's not fair. You know, you're putting information out there that really shouldn't be public. I don't think.
Yeah, I think once we have that guilty verdict, we need to go into a set of, hey, this is what happened, this is how it happened, why it happened, and there's the ruling. But until you have, it's innocent until proven guilty in my eyes. But when you put in a complaint, everybody can see it. So if I complained about Nicky Dubya and the way he runs his team, it's out there that he doesn't manage his team properly. And that may not be the case. I may just be a jealous opponent or a disgruntled team member.
An old AGM or something like that,
Right. And at that point, it's everybody can see it that, oh, well, Nicky, now the eyes are on you, and it's like, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just somebody got mad and wrote some comments and tried to get you in trouble, and not necessarily factual based and rule violating. So
exactly.
I agree with you 100% there. We had a whole segment on this on LG Snapshot one night, and it was a pretty intense conversation, and obviously transparency is needed to a certain degree, and the way we handle complaints may need to be tweaked a little bit. But once again, that's not my call. That's for the players to speak out and other GMs to get involved in the voting process as the way we legislate our league and the way the judicial process works.
And one other thing to add to that is that I feel, and this might just be me, but I don't know how you feel about it. I'd like to hear your opinion. There are a lot of times where you kind of feel like you're the third tier. You feel like that's the priority scale too. You know what I mean? That the CHL issues tend to be the slowest ones to be responded to. I know personally, like I said, I had a serious issue with my roster this week, and it took the entire week to solve it, and so I had to use an ECU 3 times this week in order to cover it up, and I felt like that was something that should have been expedited. It was a very serious issue. We're in a playoff race. We don't have time for it, and I realized that, hey, everybody's got a job to do. If they don't have enough people to handle all the disciplinary actions or whatever, maybe we should get some more people involved, or maybe we should look at the system and see what's slowing the process down. I know Brody posted something about that, I believe, in that, it's just they can only do with, as fast as they possibly can. But sometimes that's just not good enough. It really, really isn't. I know it messed up Kamloops as well. They had a problem with their roster, and they had to wait until today to have it solved as well. So, not to support my enemies or anything, but we were both in the same boat. We both needed BOG action immediately, and there was a lot of foot dragging. And I know it wasn't on purpose or whatever. It's just it's beyond frustrating when you have all this extra stuff to deal with, and you have to deal with the bureaucracy and red tape of the league.
No, I agree with you 100%. I would love to give you my take, but we have ran out of time. No, that's all right, though. We are going to have more episodes. There will be time for others to call in. So if you're watching right now on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, comment, like it, share it. Anything else you can do. I don't know if there's anything else you can do. Do all that good stuff. For everybody in the Q or in the W that's just that interested, we do have the QMJ playoff preview show coming up next, where I will have a few special guests with me to break down all the upcoming playoff matches and maybe give you our take on what we think is going to happen on the QMJ. And for those in the WHL and the curious members of the Q, tomorrow night at 9:30, we'll be doing the WHL playoff preview show where we break down the WHL playoff matchups with a few special WHL guests. So
Wait, who are those few special WHL guests?
I guess I can release it here. It's my PR staff, basically the guys that have been writing all season about these teams. I'll have Rushpak, Tiger 651981, Mata 03, and iCheap, as well as myself, breaking down the matchups. This was the deal that I established early on. If you completed the season with power rankings with me, you would be a part of this playoff preview, because this is probably going to be the most exciting show, I guess, or the most content-filled show that the CHL produces this year, because this is where all the interest comes, is the playoffs. Everything up until now doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So it's going to be exciting to see where it goes. So everybody else, I appreciate you listening. Send your questions, and we'll be back next week, and I will stay tuned to Twitter and the forums to figure out who my special guest will be next week on Mailtime. Nicky, say goodbye to everybody.
Have a good one, folks. Thanks for listening.
And everybody else, I will see you on the playoff preview show. Peace.